We are seeing Kardama Muni is saying to Devahuti, you don't have to worry because the Lord will very soon bless you by becoming your son. The Supreme Lord will descend as your son and He will increase my name and fame, Yashaha. And at the same time, He will vanquish the knot in your heart. By giving you the knowledge of the Supreme Lord, knowledge of Brahman. So Prabhupada in the purport explains some very important points. The Supreme Lord actually has no other business in this material world. We have a different business when we come to the material world. Our business is we want to enjoy independent of the Lord. So the Lord has given us this material world where we can try to satisfy those independent desires. The Supreme Lord, He does not require to come to this material world to enjoy like us. Only foolish people make that allegation. Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita. That when the Lord descends in this material world, people think the Lord has accepted a human kind of form and He is also entangled, enjoying just like any one of us. Manushim tanumashrita param bhavam ajananto. They do not realize and understand the supreme nature of the Supreme Lord. His business of coming in the material world is actually to liberate the conditioned living entity. What happens is the free living entity in the spiritual world who is surrendered to the Lord in loving devotional service. The moment he comes to this material world, he identifies with matter because of false ego, ahankara. In the spiritual world, we don't have ahankara. We have real ego. I am the servant of the Lord. I am spirit soul. Now, if you have to forget that, then you require a false ego. Just like if you go to sleep, then what happens? You forget your real identity, and in the dream you take another identity. Correct? In the dream you become a king. In the dream you become a beggar. In the dream you are seeing that some tiger is chasing behind you. It's all false. But you identify. You forget your real identity and you identify with another situation. And what is the reason? You are in ignorance, you are under sleep, you are under illusion. That makes you to forget the reality. Similar thing happens. The moment we desire this illusory energy of the Lord, arranges ahankara for us. That ahankara, that means false ego, makes us to identify ourselves with matter. So what happens? We become knotted in the material world. The moment I identify myself with this material body, then knot has already started. The Supreme Lord, He descends, He comes to this material world to slacken this knot by spiritual knowledge, so that we can sever, we can cut off this knot and go back to our original position. So when the Supreme Lord comes, He descends generally in the family of devotees, just like the Lord came in the family of Vasudev, Devaki, Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj. And He becomes their descendants, just like for the Yadus, or He becomes their son. Just like here also we are seeing Kardama Muni is saying to Devabhuti, the Lord will come as your son. But what will He do? He will disseminate this spiritual knowledge of Brahman, and by that the knot in your heart for material affection will be cut off. Material identification, that knot will be cut off. So Prabhupada in the purport is quoting Rishabdev, instructions of Rishabdev to his sons. It's very interesting. Instructions are given by Rishabdev. First he explains how the living entity becomes knotted in this material world. How this Hridaya Granthi, the knot in the heart, becomes more and more tightened. And then he explains how one can sever this knot, how one can cut off this knot. So actually, very practical instructions are given by Rishabdev. And we generally read those prayers. All of you have heard those prayers. So I'll just read. So first he explains this ahankara, the knot which we get after we come to this material world, how it becomes more and more tightened. One after another, we become more and more knotted. Pumsaha striya maithuni bhavametam tayor mitho hridaya granthi rahu. So how it starts? First it starts with false identification, ahankara. We think I am man, and a woman thinks she is woman. Actually, neither we are men or women of this material world. We are spirit, soul, servant of the Lord. But because of ahankara, we start identifying pumsam, I am man, striya, I am woman. And then what happens? Because I am thinking I am man and she is thinking she is woman, then there is attraction between man and woman. If I could understand, I am not a man, I am spirit soul. And if she could understand, she is also spirit soul, then that attraction will not be there. Attraction will be towards Supreme Spirit Krishna. But now because of false identification, I am thinking I am man, she is thinking she is woman, there is attraction. Then what happens? So knot begins. Pumsaha striya maithuni bhavameta. So this attraction starts. Then tayo mitho hridaya granthi. So this falls not between these two. Mithaha means between them. begins with sex life. Hridaya Granthi Mahu. And then this Hridaya Granthi becomes more and more tight. How it becomes? Atho Graha. Then husband and wife, they require a house, apartment. So then identification, first identification with the body, then identification with relationship between man and woman, that attraction between them. Now that has become more tight. And then they require an apartment. Graha. Kshetra, they require a land for economic development. Suta, children. Apta, friends. Vitte, then they require money. And by all this, Janasya Mohoyam Aham Mameti, he becomes disillusioned and he thinks only in the term of I, mine, my house, my land, my money, my bank balance, my society, my community. And he becomes more and more tightened, knotted in the material world. Then, next he says, Yada mano hridaya granthi rasya karmanu baddho dhrida ashlateta tada janaha samparivartate asmat muktaha param yati atihaya hetum. When the strong knot in the heart of a person implicated in material life due to result of past action is slackened, one turns away from his attachment to home, wife and children. So that means, until and unless this knot is slackened, we cannot advance in spiritual life. One has to slacken this knot. Then Rishabhdev explains the method of slackening. First he explains how we become knotted. Then he explains how you can advance in spiritual life. Only by slackening it is possible. This has to be cut to pieces. This knot has to be cut down. Otherwise we cannot advance. Next Rishabhdev explains how it is possible. So he begins by Hamse Gurau Mai Bhaktya Anuvritya. The first and most important item to slacken this knot in the heart is to accept the shelter of Paramahamsa Guru. Hamse Guru. One has to accept the shelter of pure devotee, spiritual master. Prabhupada says this is the first most important principle in devotional service. Adau Gurum Ashrayam. Srila Rupa Goswami also explains. One has to first of all accept the shelter of pure devotee, spiritual master. Then, next item he explains. Vitirshnaya Dvanda Titikshaya Cha. Vitirshnaya, Prabhupada explains, by detachment from sense gratification. And Dvandva Titikshaya Cha, by tolerating pains and pleasures of this material world. Very important instructions. Now let us say we have already identified that yes, the knot in the heart is because of our material attachments. Now, Rishabhdev is explaining how to cut off this knot. So he says, first of all, we have to accept the shelter of bona fide spiritual master. And then, under his instruction, we have to practice devotional service. How to practice devotional service? So he's saying, first is Vitarshnaya. You have to give up sense gratification. So Prabhupada translates, you should detest sense gratification. That means we should become detestful. Detestful means we should spit at sense gratification. Now we are completely inclined towards sense gratification. We have to become not inclined towards that direction. Then we will be able to advance. Next, he says, we have to learn to tolerate the pains and pleasures of this material world. That will also help us to slacken this knot in the heart. So, tolerate the duality of pleasure and pain, which are like the seasonal changes of summer and winter. Krishna also advises in Bhagavad Gita. Correct? Krishna says, it's just like sukha and dukkha of this material world. Shitoshana, sukha dukkha daha. It is just like summer and winter. So sometimes we will have pleasure, sometimes we will have pain. We should be equal in both pleasure and pain. Then we can advance in spiritual life. If there is some dukkha, if we become down to earth, we completely become disheartened, we lose enthusiasm in devotional service, then we cannot advance. If there is some material gain and you become completely swayed by material happiness, then also you cannot practice devotional service. We have to learn to be equal in pain and pleasure. Then it is possible. Then, next advice Rishabdev gives is, Sarvatra jantor vyasana avagatya. So Prabhupada translates, one should identify that actually living entity is suffering in this material world. Until and unless we identify that actually everybody is suffering in the material world, if you think there are some living entities in Swargaloka they are enjoying, or material advancement in Western countries people are enjoying, so let me advance in material development, then we cannot advance in spiritual life. It will not be possible. So, this is third, another very important instruction. Try to realize miserable condition of living entities who are miserable even in the higher planetary system. You see, even in higher planetary system, even Indra, Brahma, Chandra, none of them are free from miseries of material existence. This we have to inquire. Then, Jignasaya, one should inquire philosophically about the truths of life. That is another important thing. Tapaseha nivrittaya, undergo all kinds of austerities and penances for the sake of devotional service. And nivrittya means give up the endeavor for sense gratification. So endeavor for tapasya and give up the endeavor for sense gratification. So let me see if somebody can summarize few of the instructions one by one. Nishkinchana, what is the first item? Rishabdev says, Hamse Gurau Mai Bhaktya Anuvrittaya. Practice devotional service by, first of all, accepting, surrendering to a bona fide spiritual master, a pure devotee, Hamsa, Paramahamsa, right? Then second, Vitarshanaya. What does it mean? detachment from sense gratification. Then, yes, dvandva titikshaya, tolerate the pains and pleasure of this material world with equal mind. Then, yes, sarvatra jantor vyasana avagatya, one should understand and realize that actually everywhere the living entities are in miserable condition of life, anywhere in the material world, even in heavenly kingdom. Next, jignasaya, philosophically inquire about absolute truth. Tapaseha, practice austerity, penances. Nivrittaya, give up the endeavor for sense gratification. Okay, these are all into giving up material things, detachment, pain and pleasure, tolerate. Now he explains what is the positive things one should do. So he says, mat karma bhir, mat kathaya cha nityam. Listen to the discussion about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mat karma bhir, mat kathaya cha nityam. Mat deva sangat. Those who are attached to me, those who are Krishna conscious, those who are devotees of the Lord, those who are sadhus, associate with them. Mat deva, those who have taken me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sangat, associate with them. Guna kirtanam mein, glorify me. So listen to discussion about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Always associate with devotees. Chant about and glorify the Supreme Lord. And then he says, one who is in devotional service, he actually has no friends and he has no enemies. That is the disposition of a devotee of the Lord. Nirvairya samyopa shamena putra jihasaya deha gehatma buddhehe. And then he says, look upon everyone equally on spiritual platform. Just like we find that in Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says, right? It is said, Vidya vinaye sampanne brahmane gavi hastini shuni keva swapake cha pandita samadarshina. Those who are learned, they don't discriminate. They don't distinguish. They understand that these are all external. Somebody is Brahmana, somebody is Chandala, somebody is a dog, somebody is a dog eater. All according to karma, they have obtained these bodies. Otherwise, as spirit soul, everyone is actually servant of the Lord. So they don't distinguish people by their dress, this material body. Look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. Then give up enmity. We should not be envious of any living entity. Subdue anger and lamentation. Actually, anger and lamentation are a great obstacle for a devotee. We saw this actually in recent class, this Sunday when I was giving a class. I was talking about that the 4 Kumaras became angry. Correct? On whom they became angry? They became angry on the 2 doorkeepers, Jaya and Vijaya. Jaya and Vijaya actually were the servants of the Lord, doorkeepers of the Lord. 4 Kumaras, they are actually liberated. They are not bound by material world. They are already liberated, Mukta Purusha. But still they became angry. That means even on liberated platform, anger is there. But on what they became angry, that is very important. They became angry because they were forbidden to associate with the Lord. Very eagerly, they wanted to go and have darshan of the Lord, and they were forbidden. So they became angry. So, we become angry when our sense gratification is forbidden. When somebody obstructs our sense enjoyment, then we become angry. Right? Narada also became angry. Arjuna became angry, but for a proper cause. When we become angry for the cause of the Lord, it is different. When we become angry for our sense enjoyment, it is conditioned life. So one has to give up anger and enmity towards other living entity. Then we can advance in spiritual life. Not only that, one has to give up lamentation. One who is in devotional service should have no lamentation. If we start lamenting, looks like my earlier life was far better. I used to have so many friends. I used to have a very good bank balance. I could go anywhere, enjoy. I could go and eat in any restaurant. Now so many restrictions are there. So if we lament, then actually that is an obstruction to devotional service. A devotee is free from all these lamentations. Then, abandon identifying the self with the body and home and practice reading the revealed scriptures. We have to endeavor to understand I am not this material body. We have to stop identifying with this material body. And then what we should do? Practice reading the scriptures. We should read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. See how many positive, very, very practical aspects of how one can cut off the knot in the heart. How one can come out of the identification of the material body is given by Rishabhdev. Then he says, live in a secluded place. In Kali Yuga it is very difficult. We cannot go to Himalayas and live in a secluded place. But at least we can live in a temple of the Lord. We can make our house like a temple of the Lord, and we can live aloof from materialistic people. That way we can live aloof from people who are inclined for sense gratification. Practice the process by which you can completely control your life, air, mind and senses. We have to practice the method by which our senses can be under our control. Have full faith in revealed scriptures. We should not doubt the revealed scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata. All these are revealed scriptures. Always observe celibacy. That is also very important. Prabhupada explains in the purport. Even a grahastha who has sex life only for procreating children, he is also practicing celibacy. But one who is in grahastha life and apart from his wife, if he tries to have illicit connection with other women, then that actually will entangle us in this material world more and more. And then perform your prescribed duty, avoid unnecessary talks. Very important instruction for devotees. Unnecessarily gossiping, unnecessarily discussing subject matters which are not related to Krishna. These will actually block our spiritual progress. Then, always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, acquire knowledge from the right source, thus practicing Bhakti Yoga. You will patiently, enthusiastically be elevated in knowledge and will be able to give up false ego. that ahankara which binds us to this material world, that will become slackened when patiently, enthusiastically we keep on practicing devotional service. We will become elevated to knowledge, and with that knowledge it will be possible, we will be able to cut off this knot of false ego to this material world. Matter and spirit are knotted now. Actually, matter has no connection with spirit. Spirit has no connection with matter at all. Now we are bound because of false ego, that ahankara, and that can be cut to pieces only with spiritual knowledge. And that is what Kardama Muni is saying to Devahuti. Very soon, the Lord will appear as your son. He will give you instruction, bhavana, spiritual knowledge, and then the knot in your heart will be severed. It will be cut to pieces. And actually, that is the only process to cut the knot of material attachment to pieces. So very beautiful, very interesting instructions are given by Rishabdev, which Prabhupada is relating in the purport. So we'll stop with this. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagadguru Shiva Prabhupada ki